Now there is a fair amount of just stuff involved in homeschooling. Supplies, books, curriculum, work. How do you know what to keep and what to toss? That's exactly what we're going to be talking about in the video today, how to manage the stuff in homeschool. Keep it all, but what do you keep? I'm going to break homeschool materials down into 3 main categories today and just give you some tips to get you thinking about what you should keep and what you should toss when it comes to your own homeschool materials. Number 1 category is in regards to your kids' work. All of that hard work that they've done throughout the year. This record of their work, these notebook pages they filled out, what do you keep? Because you probably cannot keep it all, especially when you have multiple children. Now, for me personally, I do not come from a state that requires keeping work samples or a portfolio. So for me, I keep what makes my heart sing. I keep the more personal elements, the things that I know I'm going to want to remember. So this often looks like art projects they did that just were so adorable, or stories that they came up with on their own and that I wrote with them or that they wrote. The more personal side is what I tend to keep because I don't have the requirement of keeping math tests or those sorts of things from my own state. You might need to keep a little bit more if you do come from a state that requires or recommends keeping a portfolio. But for me, I lean towards those things that just make my heart go pitter-patter, the things that I want to remember from this homeschool journey. That also can look like some of the notebooks that we've made as we are doing our geography or history studies, and those notebooks serve as little records of the experiences that we've had together and show a lot more of their creativity. I am not going to be keeping things like handwriting workbooks, math workbooks, or anything where it's just, they're necessary for learning, they're necessary for getting the drills down, for building skill, building speed, but they're not something I'm going to want to look back at years later. I don't keep those. Now, what do we do with the homeschool materials we don't keep? That varies from family to family, and I want to hear your family's tradition when it comes to how do you get rid of these materials, all of these worksheets and workbooks that they've already filled out. Have you found a way to responsibly recycle them? Or do you have a different tradition? My own family growing up, we had a very cherished tradition of saving up all of those spelling tests, math tests, worksheets, and we would have a big bonfire at the end of the school year and dance around the bonfire and roast marshmallows and hot dogs over it. I've not yet started that tradition because my own children are rather young, but probably when they're a little bit older and a little bit more fire safe, we might go in that direction. The next category of materials to declutter is the school supplies. The things you're getting out and using every day. The crayons, the markers, the tape, the glue, the paper, all of that good stuff. And we do go through a fair amount of school supplies and art supplies, but how do you know when to get rid of it? Now for me, in this area, I don't prefer to do like big yearly decluttering sessions. This is an area where I really try to stay on top of things on an everyday basis and just toss things as they get used up, as they are not functioning. And this is something I teach my kids as well. Like if we pull a 1-inch piece of crayon out of the crayon box, I throw it away. If we get out a marker to use it and it's all dried up, I throw it away. I teach my kids, hey, if you're using a glue stick and you use the glue stick up, don't put the lid on it and put it back in the box. No, throw it away. We don't keep empty glue sticks. This can be a challenging skill for children to master. Sure, it can take some time, it can take some practice, but this is something that, for me, I really try not to wait and let things get into a bad state, but really just keep up on these supplies and keep the useless ones out of the box to make it easier for us to find and get the supplies that we are using on a daily basis. Now, the next area is probably the more challenging, more nuanced, and more complicated area when it comes to decluttering, and that is the general category of curriculum and books. How do you know what to keep and what to get rid of? Now, in my own family, I'm just going to say straight out, we do not get rid of almost anything in this category. For the most part, we keep it all. And that is shaped by our particular family's needs and our particular family situation. I come from a very big family with a lot of age gaps, and we're also overseas homeschoolers. So when it's so difficult to get books and curriculum over here in the first place, you are not quick to get rid of curriculum because you know the difficulty that it took to get it here and the cost that it took to get it here in the first place. So those are some things that shape the way our family treats curriculum in books. Is like pretty much once we get it, it's here to stay, and we'll find different uses for it. But another few factors to consider, which may even apply to you even if you live in the US, is one, my mom would like to tell you, grandkids come sooner than you think they will. To her, it was not that long ago that she was a young homeschool mom with a bunch of little kids running around and teaching ABCs and all that. And now she has a whole bunch of grandkids. And I have benefited a great deal from her homeschool library that she built up over decades of homeschooling. I'm reading a lot of the same books with my little boys that she read to my little sisters. I'm using a lot of the same educational games, the exact same materials. I didn't have to buy them because she already had and she kept them. Also, she would like to point out that everybody needs that old lifer homeschooling friend who has a huge library of resources that is always happy to lend out resources and help out the homeschool community in that way. So think about yourself, know your situation, and think about, could you be that lifer homeschooling friend who can, oh yeah, I can give you my Sunlight Core A for a year or two. You can give it back sometime. Yeah, I can lend out this science curriculum. Think about whether that could be you as you're building this resource. That is something I've seen my mom do, that her own library has been an excellent resource for our local homeschooling community. I've seen the resources that she has collected bless so many kids and so many families. Now, all that being said, if you can't be that person or you just don't want to be that person, if it doesn't fit your situation, your specific needs and situation to build a homeschool library that can be part of the homeschool community and benefit them, I understand. And in that kind of case, declutter at will. And here I would say, focus on probably decluttering the curriculum that you don't like and that you never want to use again. Because while our children's opinions do matter, that can vary a lot from one child to the next. What one child hated might actually work really well with a different child. But if you don't like using the curriculum, if you hate using that curriculum, then you're going to be a lot less likely to pick it up in the future for a future child. And it's just, you're not going to enjoy so much having it on the shelves. The same goes with books and games. If there's a book that you never want to read to your children again for whatever reason, if there's a game you don't ever want to play again, those are the ones I would consider getting rid of. Now, of course, if your children love them, if they can play them by themselves or read the books by themselves, I'm not saying you have to get rid of them by any means, but these are just some of the things that you could consider getting rid of, is if you, as the homeschool parent, if you don't want to use it, you don't want to read it, you don't want to play it, well, then you're less likely to get all that much use out of it. Another situation in which I would strongly consider getting rid of curriculum is if it's just hopelessly out of date. Now, there's a lot of old books that are very relevant, still very useful, but you know what I mean. There are some subject areas where the information in one book that's 30 or 40 years old, it just might not be that useful when we're trying to use this as a tool to educate our children in a subject and give them the up-to-date information that's going to help us with the current tools that we have in our current day. So that's one of the areas. In subject areas where information can go out of date, you might just need to toss resources after a long enough time. And my mom has been homeschooling long enough, 30-ish, almost 30 years at this point, that she's had to get rid of some resources for that reason. I feel like DVDs and CDs could also start kind of falling into this category, and cassette tapes a while back, because maybe you had them, they were very useful, but maybe nowadays you don't even have a CD or DVD player anymore, or maybe you can find the same videos through a streaming service or digital files. So those would be the types of things that technology has kind of made them not as useful as they once were. In reality, my best advice when it comes to not cluttering up your homeschool with too much stuff is to actually be careful of what you purchase in the first place. For me, every time I make a purchase, and what I recommend other people do, is that when you purchase this item, don't be thinking about the resale value. Don't be thinking, well, I can probably get like $100 back when I sell this anyway, so it'll be worth it no matter what. I wouldn't think like that. I would think, if I spend this money on this curriculum and all I ever get out of it is whatever I get to experience with my kids and teach my kids with this book or with this curriculum, that'll be worth it. If that will be worth it, if that's a good enough value, then I will spend the money to buy this curriculum and buy this resource. So to me, that can kind of help cut down over purchasing and over consumption, is to just, I'm not saying you can't ever resell curriculum or books. I'm just saying, don't necessarily have that in the back of your mind when you're making the purchases. Because I think if you keep that in the back of your mind, you might end up buying too much stuff to begin with. But don't have that in your mind. Just think, is this a good enough value? Am I willing to spend this $100, this $200 on this resource just solely for the purpose of educating my children and getting that education and that experience out of it? If so, buy it and have peace and be glad and use it. But when you're buying something with the idea of getting money back by reselling it, I think that's when the temptation to purchase too much and to purchase things that you don't even really end up using can become a problem. All right, now I want to hear from you guys. What are some of the guiding principles when it comes to decluttering your own homeschool? Are you more like my mom, who saves everything and keeps the next generation and keeps all of her homeschool buddies in mind? Or do you have different needs and you keep things really streamlined to fit into the space that you have? I want to hear from you. Leave me some comments down below and subscribe for more nerdy homeschool videos. See you next time. Bye.